Thanks for making a date. This is the Marketplace. About 19 business plans in the Greater Accra region have received all the necessary approvals, waiting to take off as part of the One District, One Factory program. These include businesses in the agro-processing, manufacturing and services, among others. Deputy Trade and Industry Minister Robert Ahomka Lindsay disclosed this in an interview with Joy Business after launching the district's implementation teams for the various districts in the region. He says government is engaging other financial institutions on the remaining business plans to ensure it provides every district with at least one factory by 2020.
So if you look at the spread of not just the 19, don't just focus on the 19 because, and I want to be clear, out of the 50, 19 are here, but you also know not every business succeeds. So if you look at across the spread, about 46% of all the businesses that are bankable are agri-processing. And we shouldn't be surprised. Our natural endowment is still predominantly agricultural based. But you have other things. People are making doors. One of them is making windows and doors. People are making pharmaceuticals. So it's not just agribusiness across the board, but they're all industry.
Now, to the financing, we know that government earlier wanted to take some Chinese partnership. Now, I can see that most of these are local banks that are financing. What is the status of that partnership with the Chinese?
So let me come back to it again, because I think this is somewhere sometimes the government's role is to facilitate our businesses by offering options. We offer options. One of the options is working with our local banks, and as I said, they've committed 2.5 billion cedis towards this. Another option is continuing working, and my minister is working very closely to carve out a program where we get Chinese export credit guarantee. Let me explain what that is. Our businesses want equipment, and the equipment may be coming from China. So the Chinese government offers a guarantee, offers financing, which we have then to support here to engage. But it's not just China. So we continue in that dialogue, and some of that, our minister made various pronunciations on that. We also have similar arrangement with Italy. The Italian government has the same thing. You would have read, I hope you picked up, about a week ago, the British having export cover from about 170 million pounds to 500 million pounds. That is again options industry. So please, government should provide the options available. Ours is not to tell the company, go and take this from X, because that is not the role. The companies make much better decisions on resources than we can do. So we offer those options. We're having similar discussions with the Americans. I was at the US Exim 2 weeks ago, and we hope to have some positive coming through. We'll continue to have similar dialogue with the Canadians. We're having similar dialogue with the Indians. So this is all part of the facilitation we do as a government. But at the end of the day, it is facilitations and options. No one route is going to fit everything, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, with regards to the existing companies that you said we're going to upgrade, do we have Commander Sugar Factory as part of it? Because we know its status now.
We're in Greater Accra.
Yes, but one day if it's a national event.
Yeah, but we're in Greater Accra. So we're in Greater Accra. Commander Sugar is a different base. We're in Greater Accra, so let's focus on Greater Accra. So we've talked and we've made it very clear to our colleagues here, is that the success or failure, by the way, not just for the One District, One Factory, but our whole decentralization program is dependent on every one of us, civil servants and politicians, doing our job. So our parting words and discussions we've had with them, including our website, which I hope you will stay and listen to, is that it is in their hands. We will support, we will monitor, we'll do everything appropriate. But it is up to our district implementation teams now to implement, to help them, to implement, help them. They're not the ones building the factory. So it is critical that as we're going forward, we are clear to getting that done, and we ensure that in that process, we create opportunities for businesses. The whole of this, as regions, and we'll finish next week, is to make sure we've empowered and we've given the data to our district teams to help us execute. So the parting words are this: let's make it happen.
Now, the Nation Builders Corps will offer 100,000 graduate enrollment over the next 3 years. President Akufo-Addo says government will pay each person 700 Ghana cedis every month under the initiative. Dr. Ibrahim Anyas is of the office of the Vice President, and he's been speaking with on the initiative. He's been speaking with Prince Appiah.
As far as the support, the funding arrangements, we have 600 million from this current budget, the 2018 budget, to be able to to start the program. And government had dictated that is supposed to be to cater for the setting up of the secretariat, the stipends, the training. By stipends, I mean the allowances, which is 700 per month. And we believe that in setting up the structures and all the institutional arrangements, that should be sufficient to carry the scheme for the remainder of the year.
Because I ask this question because some think that this project is not sustainable, looking at how you're going to fund this particular initiative.
Well, the sustainability question, you can look at it in several ways. In one way, for example, I suggested that the fact that you're depending on the budget implies that you're competing among other needs to get attention from the national budget, right? The other way to look at it is, if you think about the future of youth employment schemes, it has to justify its value. And I believe that in terms of justifying its value, this scheme is going to demonstrate to the taxpayer that government is on the right track, is thinking rightly about where this country has to be in terms of using the local talent that we have, developing the human resources, so that in the end, the employability of these graduates and the increased productivity because they have acquired skills would imply that this country has benefited more than probably invested in those young people.
So apart from the budget, are there other sources of funds?
That is left to the future because there are enterprise issues in terms of the enterprise module that we have, but that is for the future in terms of the layout of those structures. Yeah.
Now, about $191 million IMF cash is expected to hit the Bank of Ghana's account this week. This was after Ghana passed the program review test by the IMF board this week. Sources say the funds should be transferred as soon as the necessary documentations are completed, probably today. It is expected to boost the central bank reserves and possibly go a long way to stabilize the cedi. Now, despite passing the test, the IMF raised issues with the country's rising debts and revenue mobilization challenges. In other stories, the nation's President Akufo-Addo at this year's May Day celebration announced the creation of a 10-member committee to work out a charter within the next 6 months for Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. The committee is expected to be chaired by Senior Minister Yao Osafo-Maafo.
I welcome the partnership of organized labor with government and the private sector so that we can work together to develop homegrown solutions to our problems. This will present us with the most effective path to realizing the vision of a Ghana Beyond Aid. That is why I'm setting up a 10-member committee comprising 3 members each from government, ministries of finance, planning and employment and labor relations, organized labor, and the private enterprise federation to work out under the chairmanship of that good servant of the Ghanaian people, the Honorable Yao Osafo-Maafo, the senior minister, in the next 6 months, a charter on Ghana Beyond Aid. The charter will then be subject to scrutiny and debate by Parliament and adopted as a follow-up to the coordinated program of economic and social development policies. The nation will then know in detail how we intend to move Ghana to a situation beyond aid.
So let's take some time now to look at these critical developments. First, the release of the IMF cash of $191 million into the Bank of Ghana's account, as well as the latest call by the President for a 10-member committee to design a charter on the Ghana Beyond Aid agenda, and we're seeking the views of Courage Mate. He's an economist from Data Bank. He's been speaking with Charles IT.
We are currently assessing the impact of the IMF waivers to Ghana, and joining me is an economist with Data Bank, Courage Mate, to help us understand the remits of this very development. So first of all, Courage, help us understand, what do you make of the issuance of the waivers to Ghana by the IMF at this particular time?
Well, I mean, it was to be expected. I mean, most of the waivers were the targets that were not achieved in 2016. You recall that we hadn't done any review since that time, and so they had to do some waivers to bring the program back on track. And some of those waivers became necessary because, as we saw, revenue underperformance as well as expenditure overruns led to some targets being missed. And so with renewed commitment to fiscal discipline, some of those waivers had to be done to ensure that we are now back on track for the program.
Do you think this could have an impact, some impact on the economy, especially looking at the timeliness?
Well, yes. If you look at the indicators and the macro indicators and how the market has actually tracked them, what you notice is that the improvement in the key indicators have already been priced into our yields on our outstanding bonds, and so it is sending positive signals to the market. We expect that this will also help the government as it goes on the roadshow to issue the new Euro bond. I think that the key impact will be the fact that the new issuance premium that will be demanded by investors may come a little lower, if otherwise the IMF had not done this.
So, of course, that brings us to a very second question in terms of the issuance of this very waiver and its impact on investor confidence. Could this have an impact?
Yes, certainly. It will have a positive impact on investor confidence. But like I said earlier, the key indicators have already been observed by the market. It's already been priced into our risk assessment by the market. But what it will also do is to get this positive feedback or assessment from the IMF would add further glass or luster to the whole story. And that should help the government in beating down the new issuance premium that will be demanded at the Eurobonds.
You are an economist. Where do you see our economy lie in relation to this very engagement with the IMF, especially when we're having so much stark opposition from civil society organizations, some of them?
Well, I think that our economy is heading for better places, and that would happen if we sustain the implementation of the key reforms that are happening. See, at the heart of our problem mostly has been fiscal excesses. Now, with this particular IMF program, there are reforms that have been implemented, like the Public Financial Management Law that was passed in 2016. Now, it is even been amended to restrict the limit of the deficit. Initially, there was no limit on the budget deficit in that law. Now there is an amendment that will restrict the limit on the deficit. There's also the memorandum of understanding between the Bank of Ghana and the government that there will be no central bank financing from now till 2020. And it's expected that these MOUs will be published and create a lot of transparency. So going forward, of course, we know there are reforms that are also taking place in the banking sector and the whole financial system. So I think that these reforms will be very key in putting Ghana's economy in the right place going forward.
So all these calls for the IMF program having a detrimental effect on the economy are displaced, you say?
I wouldn't say they are misplaced, but I would say that they are necessary sacrifice that you have to undertake in the short term. You see, the public sector is so big that it is actually killing and crowding out the private sector, which is the bigger employer or biggest employer of labor. So if you have a public sector that is so big, that is killing or crowding out the private sector, it is going to hurt the sustainability of economic growth. So it is only important to undertake certain measures like the net freeze on employment in the public sector to create the space to crowd in private sector, allow private sector investment to grow, and the jobs and the job opportunities will be thrown out to recover employment level. So I think these are short-term sacrifices which will yield benefits in the medium term.
Okay, having spoken about the IMF, let's now delve into government, Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. Recently, we've had, government constitute a committee in this regard, being chaired by Osafo Marko, the senior minister. What do you make of this as an economist? Do you think that this is going to reap us the needed benefits in achieving this very program?
Well, you see, when I heard of a committee being set up, I was like, this is more like it, because in the last 12 months or so that we've been hearing Ghana Beyond Aid, Ghana Beyond Aid, it sounded a bit more abstract, like a bit more wishful thinking. Now, if you have a committee in place that has a timeline of about 6 months to produce a document to set forth the roadmap for achieving that Ghana Beyond Aid agenda, then this is more like it. And so I think that it's a step in the right direction. As we go along, I personally believe that there will be areas that we will need to tweak. And so we should be ready. I mean, the government should be ready for criticism from different sectors of the economy so that we can tweak that agenda, because I mean, in the broader sense, it is something that will help Ghana reduce our dependence on donor funding, which has always been a shock to fiscal framework.
Courage, Martin, many thanks for that very explanations there and that very analysis on, first of all, the IMF waivers to Ghana and its imperative effects. And, of course, as you did hear him, his thoughts on the constitution of a special committee to deal with government Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. We shall be following closely these two major issues to give you updates as we have them, Emmanuel.
Away from that, ARB Apex Bank says it is diversifying its income streams to increase profits and improve value for shareholders. The bank recovered from a 2016 loss of 13.6 million Ghana cedis to record profit after tax of 4.4 million Ghana cedis in 2017. The previous year's setback caused a depletion of the bank's reserves in the face of declining interest rates. Since the bank is still recovering from the huge loss recorded in 2016, it has suspended payment of dividends for the financial year. Managing Director of ARB Apex Bank, Kojo Mata, has been speaking with Prince Appiah at the sidelines of the bank's 16th annual general meeting in Kumasi.
At the 16th annual general meeting of ARB Apex Bank in Kumasi, board and management of the bank assured shareholders of an improved performance of the bank. This follows a 13.6 million Ghana cedis loss in 2016 that caused a depletion of the bank's reserves in the face of declining interest rates. Over 80% of the bank's revenue comes from interest-related activities, which makes it overly sensitive to interest rate changes. But the performance for 2017 is a positive one. Managing Director of the bank, Kojo Mata, said prudent management of the resources has resulted in the performance.
2016 there was a loss of 13.6 million. In 2017 we recorded a profit after tax of 4.4 million. What accounted for this? It has come about as a result of prudent management of our resources. However, there were some decisions we took in 2016 that significantly accounted for the loss, which was to support the rural and community banks in their communication cost, and there was also some bailout for some of the rural and community banks. So the communication cost was the main factor or a significant factor in the loss that was recorded. That notwithstanding, we think a lot of austerity measures that we brought into place in 2017 accounted for the profit of the bank. We hope to continue with such actions so that ARB Apex Bank can return to winning ways and make more profit for future sustainability.
According to the Bank of Ghana, the non-performing in December 2017 from 17.3% in December 2016. Over half of these loans are in the loan loss category. Managing Director of ARB Apex Bank appealed to customers to service their loans.
Performing loans has been the bane of every we can only encourage people who borrowed from the banks to pay back, because the funds are not for the banks. They are deposits that have been taken from other customers. So when we take deposits and we lend to customers and business people to do business, they should do well to pay back the money so that we can also pay the depositors anytime they call for their monies. The monies are not for free. So customers should do well to pay back their loans so that the banks will not be in distress, the banks will not have difficulties.
According to the board, the bank is still recovering from the 2016 loss. As a result, they've agreed to hold on to dividend payment under the financial year. Prince Apia reporting.
Professor of Cardiology at the University of Wales, Professor Nicholas Osei-Jenin, is impressing herbal practitioners to subject their products to strict proofs before bringing them onto the market for consumption. He said the claims by herbal practitioners for patients still remains a myth yet to be broken. He made the call in an interview with Joy Business. There's more in this report.
There are many claims that some traditional medicines can cure 2 or more diseases at a time. But as we put the spotlight on herbal medicines ahead of the Joy Business Health and Wellness Show, we find out what impact herbal medicines have had in the healthcare delivery system. Cardiologist Professor Nicholas Osei-Jenin says herbal practitioners must do more to prove their claims.
You put them on aspirin versus no aspirin, and you do the body count. How many people are dead, in a month? It's actually very simple, and these trials have been done. So when I give aspirin to a patient, I can say to him, you know what, this can reduce your risk of dying by 25%. That is because the trial has been done in millions, literally millions of patients around the world, where the trial has been done. You've put patients on aspirin versus no aspirin, and aspirin has been shown to reduce death rate by 25%. You can actually count the bodies. You don't have to guess. So, when some herbal man comes to me and says, this herbal drug, it can, give you the best sex life, or it can cure all your headaches, it can do any number of things. It's a very simple question. Prove it. Okay.
Professor Osei-Jenin believes the potent claims of traditional medicines are without any scientific base.
As a traditional, I should say, a conservative medic, for me, it's very, very simple. I want to use medications that have been demonstrated, that have been shown to work, and have been shown in a clinical trial to work. So I don't have to guess anymore. Anecdote is a great thing. To come to me and say, you know what, my great-grandma had...
Now, to be held at a hospital hostage after delivery can be very embarrassing. Sadly, some women are unable to afford basic things they need for delivery and post-delivery child care. As Maternal Day is marked worldwide today, we'll bring you the story of medical Dr. Elvis Kuma-Forson, who runs a financial inclusion business that helps low-income women expecting babies. That will be on the Joy Business Van. Here's an excerpt.
The arrival of this bundle of joy may not necessarily bring happiness to every mother, as bills not covered by the NHIS pile up. For some mothers, they have to spend several days in the hospital without being discharged. The reason is simple: lack of money to settle their bills. We are at the Mamobi Polyclinic, where Rose Tete is attending her antenatal for her 3rd child. She tells me Dr. Forson will this time save her some embarrassment.
So it's like when I was in the labor ward, I have to go, and then the nurses will give me something. Do you have this? I say no. Do you have this? I say no. So they will give me something. Then at the end of the day, when it's time for them to collect their money, I was not having it. So what happened is, when somebody came, maybe somebody comes there to visit me, and they say, oh, okay, take this for this, then I'll use it to support. Take this for this, then I'll use it.
That's embarrassing, isn't it?
Yes.
So you didn't want this embarrassment again?
My dear, that is it.
Insurance and good, but Musanim say insurance was whole, insurance in the whole. Musan here sika.
Don't miss the full story unfolding in the Joy Business Van later tonight on Business Live. And that's a wrap for this afternoon's edition of The Marketplace. It's been great having you on board. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. Let's meet again, same time tomorrow. Have a good afternoon.